Hi there, welcome to Fantasy Hub. I'm Mia, your storyteller. Today's story is filled with heartache, discovery, and a twist you won't see coming. So let's begin.
The projector screen flickered one final time before going completely black, leaving me standing in front of 200 faculty members with nothing but the harsh fluorescent lights bearing down on my failure. Dr. Allison, Hughes tenured professor, published researcher, woman who had dedicated her entire life to the precise calculations of celestial bodies, reduced to fumbling with a remote control like a first-year graduate student. Technical difficulties, I announced, my voice cracking slightly. The irony wasn't lost on me. I could map the trajectory of distant galaxies, but I couldn't operate basic presentation equipment when it mattered most. The promotion committee sat in the front row, their faces a mixture of sympathy and disappointment. Department head Dr. Richardson checked his watch with barely concealed irritation, but it wasn't the technology that had truly failed me that day. It was something far more fundamental: my ability to connect, to make others understand why the stars mattered, why the universe's secrets were worth pursuing. As I gathered my papers with shaking hands, I caught sight of her in the back row. Erica Sanders, the university's artist-in-residence, all flowing scarves and silver jewelry, watching me with those impossibly green eyes. She was everything I wasn't: spontaneous, intuitive, unafraid of uncertainty. And according to her university bio, she practiced astrology alongside her contemporary dance. The very thought should have made me dismiss her entirely. Science and superstition, after all, were natural enemies. So why couldn't I stop thinking about the way she'd looked at me during that disaster of a presentation? Not with pity, like the others, but with something that resembled understanding. 3 weeks later, I found myself staring at an email that would change everything. Dr. Hughes, I hope you'll consider collaborating on the university's upcoming interdisciplinary showcase. I know we come from different worlds, but I believe there's more connection between astronomy and astrology than either of us might expect. The ancients used the same stars we study. They just asked different questions. Would you be willing to meet for coffee? I promise not to read your palm. Erica P.S. Your presentation may have had technical difficulties, but your passion was clear to anyone actually paying attention. I stared at that postscript for a full 10 minutes. No one had mentioned passion in connection with my work in, well, ever. Precision, yes. Rigor, certainly. But passion? That seemed like something I'd lost along the way, buried under years of peer review and tenure pressure, against every rational instinct. I typed back, Thursday, 2 p.m., campus coffee. I'll try to keep an open mind if you promise not to mention Mercury being in retrograde. Her reply came within minutes. Deal, though I should warn you, Mercury actually goes retrograde next week. The emoji should have been my first red flag. I don't do emojis. I barely do exclamation points unless absolutely necessary. But something about that tiny winking face made me smile for the first time in weeks. Thursday arrived gray and drizzling, Seattle's default setting, and I found myself arriving at campus coffee 15 minutes early, a clear sign of nerves that I chose to attribute to caffeine withdrawal rather than anything more complex. Erica swept in exactly on time, shaking raindrops from her dark curls, and somehow making the simple act look like choreography. Dr. Hughes, she said, extending a hand that was warm and calloused in unexpected places. Thank you for taking a chance on this. Allison, I corrected automatically. And I'm not sure I'm taking a chance so much as satisfying curiosity. She laughed, a sound like wind chimes that shouldn't have been appealing, but somehow was. I'll take curiosity over skepticism. Any day. Coffee first, then we can tackle the universe. As she ordered something complicated, involving oat milk and 3 different types of syrup, I found myself cataloging details I had no business noticing. The way her hands moved when she talked, painting invisible pictures in the air. The small scar above her left eyebrow that suggested stories I'd probably never hear. The fact that she wore her age 34, according to the university directory, with the kind of confidence I'd never managed even at 41, so she said, settling into the worn leather chair across from me with her elaborate coffee creation. Tell me about the stars. Not the academic version, the version that made you fall in love with them in the first place. The question caught me off guard. When was the last time anyone had asked me about love in connection with my work? When was the last time I'd thought about it myself? I was 7, I heard myself saying. My father took me camping in Montana, and I saw the Milky Way for the first time. Really saw it, not just the few stars you can make out through city light pollution. I asked him how many stars there were, and he said scientists thought there might be as many stars in the universe as there are grains of sand on all the beaches on Earth. That's a beautiful way to think about infinity, Erica said softly. Except, it's not infinite, I said, falling back into professor mode. Current estimates suggest there are actually more stars than sand grains, roughly 10 times more in fact. The observable universe contains at least 700 sextillion stars, while Earth's beaches contain approximately. Allison, she said my name gently, but it stopped my recitation cold. What did 7-year-old you think about that night, looking up at all those stars? I stared at my plain black coffee, suddenly feeling exposed in a way that had nothing to do with failed presentations or career pressure. I thought about all the people who might be looking up at their own skies from planets circling those stars. I wondered if they were asking the same questions I was, and now I know that the statistical probability of intelligent life existing elsewhere in the universe is actually quite high, given the sheer number of potentially habitable exoplanets we've identified. The Drake equation suggests Allison. There was my name again, spoken like a gentle hand on my shoulder. What do you wonder about now? The question hung between us like a challenge. What did I wonder about? When had I stopped wondering and started only calculating? I thought. I began, then stopped. The truth was too personal, too revealing for a first meeting with a near stranger. The truth was that I wondered if I'd traded my sense of awe for professional respectability and whether it had been worth it. I wondered if the girl who used to lie on her back in dewy grass, making up stories about constellations, still existed somewhere inside the woman who's spent her days in climate-controlled laboratories. I wonder if I've forgotten how to see the magic, I said finally. Erica's smile was radiant. Now we're getting somewhere. Because astrology, the kind I practice, anyway, isn't about predicting the future or determining personality traits. It's about remembering that we're a part of something vast and interconnected. It's about finding meaning in patterns, whether those patterns are gravitational forces or mythological stories. But the patterns you see aren't based on actual astronomical phenomena. I protested, my scientific training reasserting itself. Precession has shifted the constellations significantly since astrology was developed. The zodiac signs don't correspond to the actual star positions anymore. You're absolutely right, she said, which was not the response I'd expected. But here's what I find interesting. You and I are both looking at the same sky. We're both trying to understand our place in the cosmos. You use mathematics and physics. I use symbolism and intuition. Neither approach is complete on its own. I wanted to argue with her to defend the supremacy of empirical evidence over subjective interpretation. But something in her eyes stopped me. She wasn't attacking my worldview. She was inviting me to expand it. So what exactly are you proposing for this collaboration? I asked, a multimedia presentation exploring humanity's relationship with the night sky throughout history. Your astronomical knowledge paired with movement, visual art, and yes, some carefully contextualized astrological traditions. We could show how science and story have always been intertwined when it comes to understanding the universe. It sounded dangerously like the kind of project that could torpedo what was left of my academic credibility. It also sounded like the most interesting thing I'd been asked to work on in years. I'd need to maintain scientific integrity, I said carefully. Of course. And I won't endorse any claims that aren't supported by evidence. Understood. And if this damages my reputation or my chances for promotion, then I'll take full responsibility, she said simply. But Allison, what if instead of damaging your reputation, it reminded people why they fell in love with astronomy in the first place? 2 months into our collaboration, I realized I was in trouble. Not professional trouble, though that was certainly a possibility, but personal trouble of a kind I hadn't experienced since graduate school. I was falling for Erica Sanders in the most inconvenient way possible. It started innocuously enough. We met twice a week to work on the presentation, usually in my office, or one of the university's rehearsal studios. Erica would arrive with her seemingly endless collection of flowing skirts and vintage band t-shirts. Her hair in different configurations that she claimed helped her think better, and her infectious enthusiasm for connecting seemingly unrelated concepts. Look at this, she'd say, spreading star charts across my desk next to images of ancient cave paintings. The Lascaux cave paintings include what some scholars think might be the Pleiades. These people were telling stories about the same stars you study 17,000 years ago. And somehow, through her eyes, my familiar constellations began to sparkle with new meaning. Orion wasn't just a prominent winter constellation with interesting stellar nurseries in its nebulae. It was also the hunter, the giant who captured human imagination for millennia. The Big Dipper wasn't just an asterism within Ursa Major, it was the drinking gourd that helped enslaved people navigate the Underground Railroad. "You're changing how I see everything," I told her one evening as we worked late in the rehearsal studio. She was developing a dance sequence to accompany my explanation of stellar evolution, her body somehow capturing the gravitational collapse and nuclear fusion that creates new stars. She paused mid-movement, breathing hard from exertion. "Good," she said. "You're changing how I see things too." "I am." "Allison, do you have any idea how beautiful your brain is when you're explaining something you love? You light up like a star." The compliment hit me in a place I didn't know existed. When was the last time someone had called any part of me beautiful? When was the last time anyone had noticed me lighting up about anything? "I should probably head home," I said, suddenly aware that we were alone in the dimly lit studio, suddenly aware of the way her dance clothes clung to her body, suddenly aware that I was having thoughts that were entirely inappropriate for a professional collaboration. "Should you?" she asked, and something in her voice made me look up sharply. She was watching me with an expression I couldn't quite read, her green eyes reflecting the studio's overhead lights like distant stars. "Erica. I know this is complicated," she said quietly. "I know you're concerned about your career, about what people might think. I know there's an age difference, and we come from completely different worlds. But Allison, this thing between us, it's not just professional anymore, is it?" My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. She was right, of course. It hadn't been just professional for weeks. Every shared laugh, every moment when our hands accidentally touched while reaching for the same papers, every time she looked at me with that mixture of intelligence and warmth, it had been building. "Toward this moment? No," I whispered. "It's not." She took a step closer, and I could smell her perfume, something warm and spicy that reminded me of autumn evenings. "Then what are we going to do about it?" The rational part of my brain, the part that had guided every major decision I'd made for the past 20 years, screamed warnings. This was my colleague. This was a woman 7 years younger than me, a woman whose entire worldview challenged everything I'd built my identity around. This was a risk I couldn't afford to take, but for once in my carefully controlled life, I didn't listen to the rational part of my brain. Instead, I closed the distance between us and kissed her. Erica's lips were soft and warm and tasted like the chai tea she'd been drinking. She kissed me back with a sweetness that made my knees weak, her hands coming up to frame my face like I was something precious. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, she rested her forehead against mine. "We're really doing this," she said, and it wasn't a question. "I think we are," I replied, surprised by my own certainty. "Your office has better locks than this studio," she said, and the suggestion in her voice sent heat pooling in places that had been dormant for far too long. What happened in my office that night changed everything. Not just physically, though. The physical was a revelation I hadn't expected at this stage of my life, but emotionally, fundamentally. Erica approached intimacy the same way she approached everything else, with complete presence, intuitive understanding, and a generosity that left me breathless. Afterward, as we lay entwined on the small couch I kept for student meetings, she traced patterns on my bare shoulder that felt like constellations. "I've never done anything like this," I confessed. "Had sex in your office?" she teased gently. "Been with a woman. Been with anyone like this. Been with someone who makes me feel like I'm discovering myself for the first time." She was quiet for a long moment, her fingers still moving across my skin. "How does it feel?" "Terrifying," I said honestly. "And perfect." The next few weeks passed in a blur of stolen moments and growing intimacy. We were careful to maintain professional boundaries during our official collaboration meetings, but the tension between us was palpable. I found myself looking forward to our sessions with an anticipation that had nothing to do with academic achievement and everything to do with the woman who made me feel alive in ways I'd forgotten were possible. Our presentation was scheduled for the university's spring showcase, an event that typically drew donors, board members, and local media. The stakes couldn't have been higher for my career or our relationship. "Are you nervous?" Erica asked the morning of the showcase. We were in her apartment for once, a converted loft space filled with art supplies, books on mythology, and star charts that she'd annotated with her own observations. It felt like stepping into someone else's life, someone more colorful, more spontaneous, more authentic than I'd ever allowed myself to be. About the presentation, terrified, about us. I considered the question. No, for the first time in my adult life, I'm not nervous about something that matters. She smiled and kissed me, soft and lingering. Whatever happens today, we'll face it together. The showcase was held in the university's main auditorium, and as I watched the seats fill with faculty, administrators, and community members, my old performance anxiety began to resurface. But then Erica appeared beside me backstage, radiant, in a deep blue dress that somehow managed to echo the night sky, and my panic began to subside. Ready to show them the universe? She asked. Our presentation began with my explanation of cosmic evolution, from the Big Bang through stellar formation to the eventual heat death of the universe. But instead of dry recitation, I found myself telling the story of creation itself, my words accompanied by Erica's graceful movements that somehow embodied the dance of particles, the birth of stars, the elegant spirals of galaxies. As I spoke about how ancient civilizations used the stars for navigation and timekeeping, Erica's choreography evolved to include traditional movements from different cultures, connecting our modern understanding to humanity's oldest relationship with the cosmos. When I explained how the same heavy elements forged in stellar cores existed in our own bodies, she danced the connection between earth and sky, making visible the truth that we are, quite literally, made of star stuff. The audience was mesmerized. I could see it in their faces, the same wonder I'd felt as a 7-year-old girl looking up at the Milky Way. For 45 minutes, science and art merged into something greater than either could be alone. The standing ovation lasted nearly 5 minutes afterward. As colleagues and strangers alike approached us with congratulations and questions, I caught Dr. Richardson's eye. The department head who'd looked so disappointed during my failed presentation 2 months earlier was smiling. "Dr. Hughes," he said when he finally reached us, "that was extraordinary. You've reminded all of us why we fell in love with science in the first place." But it was President Morrison's comment that truly stunned me. "I'd like to discuss expanding this collaboration into a full course offering," she said. "Perhaps we could schedule a meeting in my office next week." As the crowd began to thin, Erica and I found ourselves alone near the stage, where we just shared our greatest professional triumph. "We did it," I said, still hardly believing the response we'd received. "You did it," she corrected. "You found your passion again." "We did it," I insisted, taking her hands. "Erica, I need to tell you something." Her eyes searched my face, and I saw a flicker of concern. "What is it?" "I love you," I said, the words feeling both terrifying and inevitable. "I know it's complicated. I know it's risky. I know it changes everything. But I love you, and I needed you to know that." Her smile was radiant enough to outshine any star I'd ever studied. "I love you too," she said. "And you're right, it does. Change everything." 6 months later, I stood in President Morrison's private study, the same room where she'd offered me the opportunity to develop our collaborative course into a permanent interdisciplinary program. It was a career-defining opportunity, the kind of recognition I'd been working toward my entire professional life. There was just one catch. "I need someone I can count on to be fully committed to this program," President Morrison had said. "I can't have my flagship interdisciplinary faculty member distracted by personal relationships that might compromise her judgment." She hadn't said Erica's name, but she hadn't needed to. Academic communities are small, and our relationship had become an open secret. The choice was clear: take the position and end things with Erica, or walk away from everything I'd worked for. Now, as I stared out the window at the campus where Erica was probably teaching her evening dance class, the choice seemed impossible. How could I give up the woman who'd helped me rediscover my passion for the very field that defined me? How could I sacrifice the love that had made me feel fully alive for the first time in my adult life? But how could I walk away from the academic recognition I'd spent decades pursuing? My phone buzzed with a text from Erica. "How did the meeting go? Whatever she offered you, I'm proud of you. You deserve every good thing." The heart emoji undid me completely. I turned from the window and walked back to President Morrison's desk, where she sat waiting for my answer. "I'm honored by the offer," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. but I'm going to have to decline. President Morrison's eyebrows rose. Dr. Hughes, I hope you understand what you're giving up. I do, I said. And I understand what I'd be giving up if I accepted. I left the president's office and drove straight to the dance studio, my heart pounding with a mixture of terror and exhilaration. Through the glass doors, I could see Erica leading her evening class, her body fluid and graceful as she guided her students through a contemporary routine. She spotted me as the class ended, her face lighting up with the smile that had become my favorite sight in the world. But as her students filed past me, I saw concern creep into her expression. Allison, what are you doing here? How did the meeting go? Walk with me, I said, taking her hand. We walked in silence to our favorite spot on campus, a small garden, behind the astronomy building where the light pollution was minimal enough to see some stars. It was where we'd come after that first successful presentation, where we'd had our first real conversation about the future, where I'd first told her I loved her. I turned down the position. I said finally. Erica stopped walking, her hand tightening on mine. What, Allison, why? Because she wanted me to choose between the program and you. And you chose me? Her voice was barely a whisper. I chose us, I corrected. I chose the woman who helped me remember why I fell in love with the stars in the first place. I chose the person who makes me feel like the best version of myself. I chose love, Erica. For the first time in my life, I chose love. Tears sparkled in her eyes like distant galaxies. But your career will survive, I said firmly. There will be other opportunities, other positions, but there's only one you. She kissed me then, soft and fierce and full of promise, and I tasted salt from tears I wasn't sure belonged to her or me. I love you, she whispered against my lips. I love you so much it scares me. Good, I said, echoing her words from months ago. Love should be a little scary. It means it matters. Above. U.S., the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, the same stars that had inspired wonder in humans for millennia. The same stars that had brought us together, that had taught us both that the most beautiful discoveries often happen when we're brave enough to look at familiar things with new eyes. As we walked home hand in hand, I realized that for all my years of studying the cosmos, I'd missed the most important truth of all. Sometimes the most profound connections aren't written in the stars. They're written in the courage to reach for them together. The universe, it turned out, was vast enough for both science and love, precise enough for equations and generous enough for second chances. And in Erica's arms, surrounded by the infinite beauty of the night sky, I finally understood what it meant to be truly, completely home. 2 years later, I stood in the doorway of what had become our shared office space, a converted classroom that the university had granted us after our interdisciplinary program gained national attention. Erica was at her desk, surrounded by the controlled chaos of her creative process, dance notations scattered among astronomical charts, mythology books stacked next to peer-reviewed journals, crystals that she swore helped her focus arranged alongside my precisely calibrated measuring instruments. You know, those crystals don't actually enhance cognitive function, I said, the same gentle teasing that had become our routine. And you know that dismissing something without proper investigation isn't very scientific, she replied without looking up from her work, but I could see her smile in profile. The truth was, I'd stopped caring whether her crystals worked through metaphysical properties or simple placebo effect. What mattered was that they made her happy, and her happiness had become inexorably linked to my own. Dr. Hughes? A voice from the hallway interrupted my contemplation. I turned to find Sarah Chun, one of our graduate students, hovering uncertainly in the doorway. I'm sorry to interrupt, but there's someone here to see you. She says it's about the National Science Foundation grant. My blood ran cold. The NSF grant, the one that would fund our program for the next 5 years. The one that would legitimize everything we'd built together. I'd been waiting for their decision for months. Send her in, I managed, my voice steadier than my nerves. Doctor. Patricia Winters entered our office with the kind of presence that commanded immediate attention. I'd met her once before, at a conference where she'd given a keynote address about the future of interdisciplinary science education. She was formidable, brilliant, and not known for making social calls. Dr. Hughes, Miss Sanders, she said, nodding. To each of us. I apologize for arriving unannounced, but I wanted to deliver the news in person. Erica had risen from her desk, and I felt her move to stand beside me, a subtle show of support that gave me strength. We've reviewed your proposal for the Integrated Astronomy and Cultural Studies program, Dr. Winters continued. I have to admit, when it first crossed my desk, I was skeptical. The combination of hard science with interpretive arts seemed potentially problematic. My heart sank. This was it, the rejection I'd been dreading, the moment when our unconventional approach would finally catch up with us. However, Dr. Winters continued, and that single word changed everything. After reviewing the data from your pilot program, the student retention rates, the community engagement metrics, and the overwhelmingly positive feedback from your peers, the foundation has decided to award you the full 5-year grant. The words hit me like a physical force. 5 years. Full funding, legitimacy. There is one condition, Dr. Winters added, and my brief elation faltered. The foundation wants to expand your program. We're looking at creating similar interdisciplinary initiatives at 5 other universities across the country, with you two as the consultants for implementation. I looked at Erica, seeing my own amazement reflected in her eyes. This wasn't just validation, it was transformation. Our little experiment was about to become a movement. We're honored, Erica said, finding her voice before I found mine. But we'd need to discuss the details, the timeline, how it would affect our current students. Of course, Dr. Winter smiled. That's exactly the kind of thoughtful response I was hoping for. You'll have my full support, and Dr. Hughes, I believe congratulations are in order for your promotion as well. I blinked. I'm sorry. Professor Morrison didn't tell you? The board approved your promotion to full professor yesterday. Apparently, your innovative teaching methods and the publicity surrounding your program made you quite the asset to the university. After Dr. Winters left, Erica and I stood in our office in stunned silence. 2 years ago, I'd been a failing academic whose career seemed destined for mediocrity. Now I was a full professor with national recognition, a successful program, and the love of my life standing beside me through it all. We did it, Erica said finally, echoing my words from that night after our first presentation. We did it, I agreed, but the weight of everything that had changed, everything we'd built together, made the words feel insufficient. That evening, we celebrated at our favorite restaurant, a small Italian place downtown that we'd discovered during one of our early collaboration sessions. As I watched Erica animatedly discuss our expansion plans, gesturing with her wine glass and making the other diners smile with her enthusiasm, I was struck by how completely she'd become part of my world, and I of hers. I have something to tell you, I said during a lull in our conversation. She raised an eyebrow. Good something or concerning something? Life-changing something, I said, my heart suddenly pounding. I reached into my jacket pocket and pulled out the small velvet box I'd been carrying for weeks, waiting for the right moment. Erica's eyes widened, her wine glass freezing halfway to her lips. Erica Sanders, I said, opening the box to reveal the ring I'd spent months designing, a constellation of small diamonds arranged to mirror the Pleiades, her favorite star cluster. You taught me that the most beautiful discoveries happen when we're brave enough to look at familiar things with new eyes. You've been my greatest discovery, my most important collaboration, my home in this vast universe. Tears sparkled in her eyes, and she set down her wine glass with trembling hands. 2 years ago, I was a woman who had forgotten how to see magic in the world, I continued. You didn't just remind me, you became my magic. Will you marry me? Yes, she whispered, then louder. Yes, absolutely yes. As I slipped the ring onto her finger, the other diners burst into spontaneous applause. Erica laughed through her tears, pulling me across the table for a kiss that tasted like wine and possibility, and the future we were about to build together. 3 months later, we were married in the university's botanical garden under a canopy of stars. It was a small ceremony, close friends, family, colleagues who had become friends, and students who had become like family. Dr. Richardson officiated, having gotten ordained online specifically for our wedding, and President Morrison served as one of Erica's bridesmaids, a development that still seems surreal. I wore a simple white dress that Erica had helped me choose, and she wore deep midnight blue with silver accents that caught the light like distant galaxies. Our wedding rings were engraved with coordinates, the location where we'd first kissed, translated into celestial terms. I never thought I'd be the type of woman who cried at weddings. I confided to Erica as we danced our first dance to a song she'd chosen, something about stars aligning that managed to be both scientifically plausible and utterly romantic. I never thought I'd be the type of woman who married a scientist, she replied, spinning gracefully in my arms. But then again, you're not just any scientist. What kind of scientist am I? I asked, curious about her perspective even after all this time. You're the kind who remembers that wonder comes first, she said. The kind who knows that questions are more important than answers. The kind who understands that the universe is vast enough for both facts and dreams. Later that night, in our hotel room overlooking the city lights that couldn't quite dim the brightest stars, Erica curled against my side with the contentment of someone who had found their place in the world. Do you ever regret it? She asked, quietly, turning down that position, taking the unconventional path. I considered the question, looking back at the woman I'd been 2 years ago, lonely, disconnected, brilliant, but brittle. Then I looked at where I was now, married to my best friend and greatest love, professionally fulfilled in ways I'd never imagined possible, part of a community that valued both rigor and creativity. Never, I said, meaning it completely. That position would have given me prestige, but it wouldn't have given me purpose. It wouldn't have given me you. It wouldn't have given me the chance to help students fall in love with the universe the way we did. The way we do, she corrected gently. Present tense. We're still falling, aren't we? She was right. Every day brought new discoveries about our work, about each other, about the endless capacity for growth and connection that I'd never allowed myself to explore before. Every day, I fell a little more in love with both the woman beside me and the life we'd built together. Mrs. Hughes Sanders, I said, testing out the hyphenated name we'd chosen. I love the way that sounds. Dr. and Mrs. Hughes Sanders, she corrected with a grin. Don't forget, I'm finishing my doctorate in dance therapy thanks to your encouragement. We'll both be doctors soon. The pride in her voice made my heart swell. Watching Erica pursue her advanced degree while maintaining her artistic practice and helping to run our program had been like watching a star being born beautiful, powerful, and transformative. A year into our marriage, we received an invitation that would test everything we'd built together. Harvard University wanted to offer us both positions, me in their astronomy department, Erica in their new performing arts therapy program. It was an opportunity that would have been unimaginable to the woman I'd been before, and it came with the kind of prestige and salary that could set us up for life. It's Harvard, I said, staring at the official letterhead as we sat in our backyard, sharing a bottle of wine and watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of rose and gold. It's Harvard, Erica agreed, her voice carefully neutral. We sat in silence for a while, both understanding the magnitude of what was being offered and what it might cost us. Our program here was thriving, our students were engaged and successful, our colleagues had become genuine friends. We'd built something beautiful and meaningful, but was it worth more than the opportunity of a lifetime? What does your gut tell you? Erica asked finally. I thought about it, really thought about it, consulting not just my rational mind, but the deeper wisdom I'd learned to trust since meeting her. My gut tells me that we've already found our opportunity of a lifetime, I said. Right here. With each other, with our students, with work that matters not because of where we do it, but because of why we do it. Erica's smile was radiant. My gut says the same thing. We declined Harvard's offer the next day, and I felt nothing but relief. 5 years after that first disastrous presentation, I stood in the same auditorium where Erica and I had premiered our collaboration, but now I was giving the keynote address at the university's annual research symposium. The audience was 3 times larger, filled with educators from around the world who had come to learn about interdisciplinary teaching methods. When I first met my wife and collaborator 5 years ago, I thought I knew exactly what science was supposed to look like: rigorous, objective, separate from emotion or intuition or anything that couldn't be measured and quantified. I could see Erica in the front row, now Dr. Erica Hughes Sanders, wearing the smile that still made my heart skip beats. Beside her sat some of our first students, now graduate students and teachers themselves, spreading our integrated approach to new institutions. What I've learned through our work together is that the best science, the kind that truly serves humanity, requires both precision and passion, both analysis and wonder. When we teach students to see the universe as both a collection of physical phenomena and a source of inspiration, we don't diminish science, we elevate it. The presentation that followed was everything my first attempt hadn't been: confident, engaging, transformative. I talked about student outcomes, about the joy of discovery, about the importance of making science accessible to minds that might approach it differently than I had. I talked about love for the subject matter, for the students, for the process. of learning itself. Afterward, during the reception, a young woman approached me with the kind of nervous energy I remembered from my own graduate school days. Dr. Hugh Sanders, she said, I'm starting my dissertation on the role of arts integration in STEM education, and I was wondering, would it be possible to visit your program? To observe how you and Dr. Hugh Sanders work together? I smiled, remembering my own desperation for mentorship when I was her age, remembering the loneliness of feeling like I had to choose between passion and professionalism. Of course, I said, but I should warn you, once you start integrating different ways of knowing, it's hard to go back to seeing the world in just one dimension. That's exactly what I'm hoping for, she replied. That night, as Erica and I walked through the campus that had become our home, our sanctuary, our launching pad for dreams we'd never dared to imagine, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. Do you know what I love most about our story? Erica asked, as if reading my thoughts. Tell me. It's not a story about choosing between love and career, or science and art, or any of the other false binaries the world tried to impose on us. It's a story about integration, about finding ways to honor all the parts of ourselves. She was right, as she so often was. We hadn't sacrificed anything essential. We'd found ways to expand, to include, to create space for everything that mattered. I love you, Dr. Hugh Sanders, I said, stopping to kiss her under the streetlight outside the building where we'd first met. I love you too, Dr. Hugh Sanders, she replied, and in her voice I heard the same wonder that had drawn me to the stars as a child, the same curiosity that had led me to risk everything for love, the same joy that filled our days now as we continued discovering the universe together. Above us, the stars wheeled in their ancient patterns, and for the first time in my life, I didn't need to analyze their composition or calculate their distance. I simply let them witness the love we'd built beneath their light, grateful for their constant presence in our ever-expanding story.